He is the rarest Apollo butterfly in the world. With just a gentle flutter of his wings, he made countless male insects fall for him. But now, he is left out in the cold at the auction site, with no one showing interest, even though his starting bid is only 0 yuan. Moreover, if one wins the bid for the man as a female slave, they will also receive all the assets under his name as a bonus. Yet even so, everyone present remains unmoved, because this is an insect world where males are revered and females are pitied. For a female insect to survive, they must rely on the spiritual comfort of a male insect. So even the lowest ranking male insect can have 365 female slaves taking turns to serve him in bed. And the man before them is labeled as a brutal monarch who takes pleasure in killing male insects, one of the top combatants in the female empire. Everyone is afraid of being blown into insect jerky after being auctioned off and taken home. At this moment, the military dagger Alvin, who went unsold as an auction item, the fate awaiting him is to have his wings stripped off, then executed. Pluck off his wings. Under the auction stage, the dissatisfied shouts of the bear cubs gradually rise. Zi Li, through the holes of the mask he is wearing, slowly scans the surroundings. Just moments ago, he transmigrated into this F-grade land insect armor waste bear insect body. The sergeant carrying out the execution on stage kicked Alvin to the ground with one foot. Only a tearing sound was heard. One wing, along with flesh and blood from Alvin's shoulder blade, was torn off by force. Afterward, another tearing sound that made all insects tremble with fear. The other wing was also torn off and thrown beside Alvin. This rare morpha butterfly just had its wings torn off like that, alive. Seeing this, Zi Li's pupils directly trembled. In his previous life, as an entomologist, he naturally did not want to see such a rare morpha butterfly lose its life like this. Moreover, he had already read the original work. The surging light beneath those ice blue eyes at this moment is the funeral dirge for all the male offspring present. Thinking of this, Zi Li resolutely raised the number plate in his hand. The female insect in charge of the auction on stage was also stunned for a moment. Male offspring Zi Li, number 53, participates in the bidding. Are there any other male offspring willing to participate in the bidding? In view of Alvin's brutality, naturally, no one in the audience dared to bid. After a perfunctory inquiry in due form, the female insect directly struck the auction hammer. There was no way to bid. Lot 53. The noble insect, Zi Li, directly obtained the auction item. The brutal military thorn, Alwin. At this moment, the noble insect Darian in the first row made a dissatisfied sound. Insect envoy, advise you to think carefully. The other party, precisely based on Alwin's vast wealth, to falsely accuse Alwin as the culprit of the attempted husband murder. Also in the original work, he was the first cannon fodder to die by Alwin's hand. He narrowed his eyes slightly, his tone as arrogant as ever. Waste insects should have the self-awareness of waste insects. Otherwise, I'm afraid you'll have money but no life to spend it. After his words, the venue buzzed with discussion. This piece of insect shit isn't going to hide, is he? Impossible, right? All the gambling dens know he has no money left to lose. If it weren't for him being a noble insect, he might have even lost his only large villa. At this moment, the noble insect beside Zi Li also advised him, calm down, no matter how short of money you are. You can't steal Darian's money. Do you have a death wish? He looked at the handsome, blonde, noble insect beside him. This one, who was quite caring towards the original host, was the male number 2, Jeffrey. Hearing this, he waved his hand, indicating there was no need to worry. He didn't like to cause trouble, but he wasn't afraid of trouble either. Zi Li looked up towards Darian sitting in the first row of the auction venue. He sat in the last row. Their two gazes collided across the distance. The blood-colored eyes beneath the silver mask held little emotion. just as humans wouldn't pay excessive attention to an ant. As if sensing the provocation in the gaze, Darian slammed the table and abruptly stood up. Rising along with him were over a dozen insectoids behind him. Yet Shirley wasn't flustered in the slightest. The ruby-encrusted, gold-engraved cane tapped the floor with measured force. He enunciated each word clearly. "Alvin now belongs to me. All his assets should rightfully be transferred to me." Shirley turned his head to look at the association head on the main auction platform. His gaze swept over Alvin, who was pinned to the ground by Jixing Junsi, covered in blood. According to the special protection law for insectoids, the male insectoid possesses all assets of his female sovereign. Isn't that right, association head? That's correct. It is indeed so. The association head was also caught off guard by Shirley's questioning. He hadn't expected this low-ranking male insectoid from the last row would dare to provoke Darian from the first row. Only then did he suddenly realize. Lord Shirley, how could you grant the status of female sovereign to this brutal military? Female? No, what I mean is, I strongly advise against doing this. Realizing his misspoken words, the association had quickly corrected himself. The female sovereign represents the formal spouse of the male insectoid. It differs greatly from disposable female companions or female slaves, who can be discarded at will. I insist. Upon hearing this, Shirley slowly tilted his head. The silver mask paired with a pair of translucent eyes. Instantly, the venue was filled with the sound of sobbing. Is this really Zili? Why does he look even more disgusting than Alwyn? This time, he has thoroughly offended Darian. On the auction platform, the association president looked at Darian with difficulty. Since Alwyn is now the secondary consort of Master Zili, all of Alwyn's property should rightfully belong to Zili. Damn male, Darian cursed and was about to charge forward, but was held back by his companions. This is the Imperial Auction House, after all. Hundreds of elite soldiers are stationed here, fully armed. Due to the special male-to-female ratio, the Empire protects the life and safety of every male insect. Even a useless male insect like Zili, with only F-level psychic power, at the very least, he couldn't take action in the heavily guarded Imperial Auction House. Darian calmed down, glaring fiercely at Zili. So it's Zili, huh? I've remembered your name. You just wait. But Zili merely raised his cane, pointing at the few honor medals in Darian's hand, and said calmly, "Leave my property behind." Those few honor medals were Alwyn's military service badges. Darian sneered, and without waiting for Zili to stop him, casually threw the medals to the ground and trampled on them wantonly. After several kicks, the jade military badges immediately shattered. Zili was so angry he just wanted to pinch the philtrum to calm himself. Turning his head, he indeed caught sight of a faint blue figure, rushing straight towards Darian. The cane slid forward on the smooth ground. It bounced and tapped on Alwyn's leg as he approached. He steadily caught the off-balance Alwyn, and fell backward with the momentum. Zili noticed something was wrong with Alwyn's condition. Otherwise, with his F-level lungworm body, he couldn't have stopped Alwyn so smoothly. This little butterfly was severely injured, and needed treatment as soon as possible. Darian was so scared he almost wet his pants. He fled through the back door with his lackeys. Several soldiers took the heavily injured and dying Alwyn, and locked him back in the cage. "Can I take Alwyn away now?" Zili said as he put the last piece of broken jade into his pocket. The association head wiped his cold sweat with a handkerchief, and said respectfully, "Of course. After the wedding ceremony is over, you can take him away." The officiating bear read several pages from the document. In short, it means after marriage, the male bear can unconditionally own all property offered by this female, and all future income of the female will belong to the male. After all, the male is willing to condescend to marry the female. That is a fortune countless females could only dream of. Reminded by the association head, Zi signed his name on the last page of the document, somehow feeling like he was forcibly taking a civilian woman. Zi rubbed his aching temples. Can I take her away now? The association head rubbed his hands together, with a face full of smiles. There is one last ceremony. Of course, if you are unwilling, you can also skip this step. Zi ignored the chairman's malicious guidance. In this insect world, if the male insect during the wedding ceremony is unwilling to kiss his own female lord, then it represents he only sees the other as a tool insect for amassing wealth. For a female insect, the male insect who married her, being unwilling to kiss her at the wedding ceremony, is the most severe humiliation. Other female insects would also look down on Alwyn because of this. Even other male insects, if momentarily inclined, could casually take Alwyn away to play with. According to the logic of the insect race, so disgusted, your wife surely wouldn't mind if I had a little fun with you, right? Zi coughed lightly. His headache worsened. Whether he kissed or not, his actions in the eyes of this little butterfly would be a kind of humiliation. To kiss or not to kiss. Zi leaned on his cane and paced to the front of the cage. Inside the dim iron cage, Alwyn was curled up on his side in the corner of the cage. Fresh, warm blood seeped from his beautiful shoulder blades, layering over the congealed, cool dark red blood. Zi reached out his hand and lightly tapped the other's shoulder. Alwyn dodged slightly, but the movement wasn't large. Seeing this, Zi frowned. He was certain that Alvin couldn't possibly not want to hide. But he was now far too weak. He didn't even have the strength to evade. Or perhaps Alvin had used all his strength to resist some kind of erosion. Unable to spare any more energy, then there was only one explanation: Alvin's mental riot. Even if a female insect's combat power is strong, after their mental energy goes out of control, if they cannot receive timely mental soothing from a male insect, their body will gradually stiffen, ultimately leading to rigid limbs, inability to move, until death. And it was unknown how long his condition had been dragged out. It seemed his body had already begun to stiffen. Zi frowned, reaching out to touch the suppression collar on Alvin's neck. The suppression collar is a torture device used for criminal female slaves. Master Zi, this is a suppression collar. The association head only thought that Zi had never played with the suppression collar before. So he explained, this brutal female insect is experiencing a mental riot. Removing the suppression collar would cause him to run amok. Zi felt helpless and could only release the suppression collar, preparing to withdraw his hand. But his pale hand was suddenly bitten by Alvin. Seeing this, several gentlemen rushed over, but were promptly stopped by Zi's voice. It's fine, don't disturb me from completing the ceremony. The association head was also somewhat worried. Master Zi, I think it's better to cancel the final ceremony. It wouldn't be good if he hurt you. Zi paid no attention to the association head, but allowed Alvin to bite the back of his hand. He was drinking his own blood. Sensing that Alvin's emotions had slightly calmed, Zi slowly leaned his body forward and leaned against the side of the cage. The two of them were in a dim corner, blocking everyone's gaze. He knelt on one knee, his gaze level with Alvin's. He curled his fingers and gently stroked Alvin's cheek. Alvin noticed Zi's approach, a glacier blue light swirling in the depths of his eyes. He wanted to retreat and avoid the other's touch, but instinct drove him to desperately suck the blood of this male insect. Having never had intimate contact with any male insect before, he now knew for the first time that the blood of male insects actually contained a large amount of spiritual energy. He didn't know whether all male insects' blood had this effect, or if only this particular male insect was like this. By consuming the blood and receiving spiritual soothing, Alvin's spiritual turmoil gradually subsided. His stiff limbs began to relax. Alvin lifted his blood-stained face, the anger in his eyes replaced by confusion. At that moment, that worthless male insect leaned in closer. His warm lips landed on Alvin's forehead, very light and very gentle. Alvin froze on the spot, staring at this F-grade, worthless male insect, who gently kissed him and then pulled away. The other's lips were still stained with his blood. His mind. He was kneaded not too lightly nor too heavily, by a large palm. A very soft sentence sounded by his ear. Be good, let go. The absurd thing was, he really obediently let go with his mouth. Zilin casually wrapped the white bandage around his hand. Then, smiling, he looked at the association president. Can I take him away now? Returning to the villa, he reached out and knocked on the bars of the cage, lowering his gaze to look at Alwyn, who was still weak inside the cage. Let me treat your wound. Can you not fight? If you don't speak, I'll take it as your consent. Saying this, he pressed his hand on the electronic lock of the cage. Click! The first layer of the electronic lock fell to the ground. Li was about to open the second lock, but he paused in his movement. His peripheral vision caught Alwyn's hand hidden behind his back. The combat suit clung to his arm, outlining the thin muscle lines. Alwyn was secretly gathering strength. Seeing this, Zilin silently picked up the electronic lock from the ground and locked it again. He obediently moved to the other side of the cage, squatted in front of Alwyn. If we don't stop the bleeding soon, you will die. Alwyn turned his face away, remained silent. Li shifted a couple of steps, continued, how about this? After you heal from your injuries, I will let you go and return all your property to you as well. Hearing this, Alwyn turned his head away, closed his eyes, his face full of disbelief. Li helplessly ruffled his own hair. For a certain moment, he did think about it. If this major villain were to die, the world would be at peace. But he is an entomologist obsessed with butterflies. Heaven allowed him to see once again the already extinct Morpha Helena reappearing in the world, only to have him watch helplessly as this beautiful butterfly dies right before his eyes. It's too cruel. After a moment of hesitation, Sherry ran out of the guest room. When she returned, she was holding a pair of beautiful, giant wings. How about returning your wings to you? He couldn't bear to part with them. But they had already been removed and couldn't be reattached. Before the words had fully left his mouth, a loud bang was heard. Alvin suddenly sprang up and threw a punch, heavily smashing it against the cage. The material of the pillar was unknown, but it was absolutely sturdy enough. Yet even such a sturdy cage was bent by Alwyn barehanded. Generally speaking, a female insect would only spread its wings when receiving mental soothing from a male insect, under extreme pleasure, to display absolute submission. The blue light in Alwyn's pupils flowed eerily. He wished he could kill this worthless male insect, who had repeatedly insulted him. Male insects are inherently weak, truly pathetic in combat. If it weren't for the scarcity of male insects and their special legal protection, female insects could crush swaths of male insects with one hand. Li swallowed hard, took half a step back. Too brutal. A shiver ran down his spine. His chest heaved violently, involuntarily, and he coughed fiercely. Leaning against the wall, he returned to the master bedroom. Following the original host's memory, he found medicine in the bedside drawer, grabbed the cold water nearby, and swallowed the medicine in a few gulps. After a moment, his coughing finally subsided. He entered the bathroom, washed his face, and only then gradually recovered. He looked up at the mirror wall. The man in the mirror was very refined, carrying a unique scholarly air like a university professor. He wasn't sure whether the original host had always looked exactly like him, or if it was some effect caused by his transmigration. But fortunately, He still looked exactly like his original self. The original owner's role setting in the book was a sickly, dying F-class, worthless male insect. Although he didn't know the reason behind it. The classification of male insects' spiritual power levels had one obvious characteristic. The better looking they were, the higher their spiritual power level, at least from how things appeared now. With his face, there was no way he could be a worthless F-class. He picked up his phone, opened the Elite Male Insect app. This was a software exclusively for male insects to use. He entered the forum section, made a post, asking how to pacify a rampaging female insect. Soon, the post received a large number of replies. Several forum moderators actively posted large amounts of advice resembling legal clauses, and there were also many male insects enthusiastically participating. Zi Li skipped over the useless suggestions. Things like putting a suppression collar on the female insect, locking her in a cage, etc. After all, Alwyn went berserk precisely because of these things. Soon, a highly upvoted reply caught Zi Li's attention. You can put pretty suppression cuffs on her hands and feet. Bro, you have a muzzle at home, right? That's essential. Get all these equipment ready for her. Then you just need to release a little spiritual power. And even the wildest female insect will be pacified and tamed. Whether you want to whip her, or use a knife to cut her delicate skin, she will enjoy it. Hehe. Seeing this, Zi Li closed it. He cursed under his breath, calling him a pervert, but thinking that Alwyn's injury couldn't be delayed any longer. And the other party was completely uncooperative. He ruffled his hair. Silently, he pulled open the first drawer of the bedside cabinet. It was filled with various styles of restraint cuffs, ankle cuffs, and muzzles. Alwyn, we can coexist peacefully, right? Zi Li opened the cage again with his toys. But as expected, he still encountered resistance. With a loud clatter, Zi Li was pinned against a pillar, his head spinning from the impact. He grabbed Alwyn's arm, the one that was choking his neck. Alwyn, hey. Hurting me won't do you any good. Fortunately, Alwyn was still wearing a suppression collar around his neck. If it detected Zi Li's vital signs dropping below 5%, the suppression collar would activate its self-destruct mechanism first, killing Alwyn. Zi Li reached out and touched Alwyn's neck. You've been wearing this thing for a long time, haven't you? It must be uncomfortable. As he spoke, his pale fingertips pressed against the sensor lock on the suppression collar. After scanning Zi Li's fingerprint, the metal ring beeped and automatically unlocked. Alwyn's eyes instantly showed surprise and confusion. Seeing the atmosphere slightly ease, Zi Li proactively placed his hand near Alwyn's lips. He said softly, "Your body must feel very stiff and uncomfortable, right? If you want to bite, then bite." Alwyn lowered his gaze. His gaze happened to fall on Zi Li's tiger mouth. The tooth marks from his own bite were still visible there. At the auction venue, he had only drunk a little of Zi Li's blood, and the swearing condition had greatly alleviated. Instinct drove him to bite down. The hand gripping Zi Li's arm slowly loosened. The recently healed wound was bitten open again. Blood seeped out, sticking to Alwyn's lips. So good. Alwyn heard Zi Li's words. His entire body stiffened. Was this praising him? Was harming the bear cub something worthy of praise? He tightly gripped Zi Li's arm, increasing the force of his bite. A gentle mental energy invaded his body along his throat. Although Alwyn felt very ashamed, after his stiff body was soothed by the mental energy, every cell stood up in excitement. He looked up in confusion, seeing this bear cub's hand reaching towards him. He immediately defensively wanted to retreat, but his mouth still bit the other's hand, unwilling to let go. Finally, that large palm landed on his head, rubbed twice. Another, so good, drilled into his ears. Alwyn's cheeks felt slightly warm. Zi Li tightened the corners of his mouth, pressed down on Alwyn's head. It was furry, The feel of it was better than imagined. He had finally stabilized Alwyn's emotions. He quietly retrieved the prop box nearby. Open the box. Take out a pair of leg cuffs. These leg cuffs are not mere torture devices, but rather little toys that bear insects all enjoy. The click-clack sound rings out. A few times. Zhi fastens the rings around Alwyn's hands and feet. Only the last item remains. Zhi's Adam's apple bobs and rolls. Considering the injuries on Alwyn's neck, he doesn't use the one with fur. Instead, he takes a light golden metal ring collar. Zhi notices those blue eyes gradually regaining clarity from their daze. He hesitates no longer and fastens the collar around Alwyn's neck. In the brief span of those few breaths just now, Alwyn's world seemed to have been put on pause. Apart from the sweet, delicious blood in his mouth, he could hear no sounds, see no things, as if he had walked into a vast maze and couldn't find his way out no matter what. He was startled awake by a faint, crisp sound. When he came back to his senses, Alwyn felt the discomfort on his hands and feet, looked down and saw the handcuffs and leg cuffs fastened on him. Rage instantly erupted. This bear insect actually used such toys to humiliate him. Alwyn moved, but then heard a clear, crisp bell sound coming from his neck. The color of his eyes was frighteningly pale, his skin pure and transparently white. In his aloofness, there was an increasingly intense sense of fragility. Zhi's heart skipped a beat, knowing clearly that this was a sign of Alwyn's violently intense emotions. Without waiting for Alvin to deliver a fatal blow, immediately activated the handcuffs and shackles. The ring-shaped handcuffs and shackles, under special design, attract each other, like the strongly magnetic north and south poles attaching together. Alvin, pulled by the traction force, became unsteady on his feet, almost fell to the ground. Yet he still held onto Zhi's hand with his teeth. Losing his balance, he lunged into Zhi's embrace. In order to steady Alvin, Zhi very naturally wrapped his arm around the other's waist from behind, but felt the hand being bitten hurt even more. He smiled wryly. "If you bite again, don't blame me for being impolite." His body is weak and seriously ill. In order to stabilize Alvin, he had to offer some blood. But if Alvin continues sucking his blood like this, he really will die soon. Hearing this, Alvin remained silent. Only silently increased the biting force. Zhi instantly gasped in pain. The hand resting on Alvin's waist lifted. Just like that, with a smack, landed on the other's buttocks. Feeling his palm bounce off from a soft resilience, Zhi curled his fingers, couldn't help but feel somewhat guilty. He swore that smack really was just inadvertent, no other meaning. But Alvin obviously didn't think so. He widened his eyes. Besides the hatred and desire to kill this bastard, an even stronger sense of shame emerged. Indeed, every bear insect is a scoundrel. Darwin was stubbornly resisting the instinctual submission brought by spiritual soothing. His hands and feet were tightly shackled. Then he would bite him to death with his teeth. Sherry was well prepared for this. He followed the methods taught by those brain-dead bears, gathering a large amount of mental energy in his palm. Then came another, crisper. A brighter, striking sound echoed in the room. After a brief dead silence, Alwyn let out a suppressed groan and collapsed softly into Sherry's arms. The action of lunging to bite Sherry's neck turned into a soft kiss, landed on Sherry's Adam's apple. Sherry felt as if his whole body was about to explode. In his previous life, he had devoted all his energy to studying insects. This was the first time he had such intimate contact with someone else. His voice was hoarse, apologizing with his words, but he deftly placed the muzzle in his hand over Alwyn's face, pulled the strap tight. The black muzzle pressed into the delicate skin, instantly earning a furious glare. Those icy blue pupils were now almost transparent, as if a raging blizzard was sweeping through, wanting to freeze the entire world beneath the snow, proving that Alwyn's emotions had reached their peak. In a state of madness, Sherry innocently touched his nose. This little butterfly was furious. The kind that can't be soothed. What could he do? He was just earnestly saving a dying little butterfly. Zhi lifted Alwyn and carried him out of the cage and threw him onto the soft bed. Alwyn struggled to turn over and get up, but his butt was slapped heavily again. Be good if you don't want to be hit. As the words fell, another surge of immense psychic energy invaded his body. Alwyn's lips parted slightly. His eyes lost all focus. His mind went blank. He curled up unconsciously. His body trembled violently. It seemed like extreme agony, yet also like he was immersed in some indescribable pleasure. This feeling was even more exhilarating than when he pierced through an enemy's chest on the battlefield, or cut off an enemy's head. Although he really didn't want to admit it, Zhi's psychic soothing was irresistible to him. Alwyn's heart was tangled with conflict. But what shocked Alwyn even more was that the other party, after channeling such a vast amount of psychic energy into him, still had an endless, continuous flow of psychic power, with no sign of depletion. Wasn't he just an F-grade useless male insect? Alwyn's train of thought was interrupted by the suddenly halted psychic soothing. He unconsciously parted his lips slightly, then promptly bit his lower lip to stifle a moan. A large palm landed on his hand, squeezing it. Then it squeezed his arm, shoulder, thigh, and calf. Not even the ankles and toes were spared. Alwyn bit his lips tightly in shame. The other's fingertips carried a spiritual soothing. With every touch, it made him feel shamefully, wanting to make some strange noises. For Jun Si, this was simply a great humiliation. He closed his eyes, turned his face away, and endured the painful torment. Zhi carefully examined Alwyn's condition. On the other's body, only the wound on his back from having his wings removed was very severe. Other places only had minor bruises. And now, after the spiritual soothing, Alwyn's hands and feet were no longer abnormally stiff. The huge gashes on his back had also healed, leaving only 2 ugly scars. He was amazed by Alwyn's terrifying self-healing ability, while also pondering how to comfort this little butterfly. He ruffled his hair, truly unable to think of any pretty words. His fingertips touched Alwyn's scars, using action to show he didn't dislike them. His voice was warm, deep, and sincere as he said, "Don't worry. I will definitely heal your wounds." Alwyn had no reaction to Zhi's words. After a female insect's wings are removed, only a very few types of female insects can regrow new wings. But unfortunately, butterflies are not among them. He had most of his power suppressed by the wool ring. If not for this bear child's abundant spiritual power, helping him heal his wounds, his final outcome is probably just a slow death. Zhi's fingertips lightly touched the scar on Alwyn's back. For Alwyn to regrow his wings is definitely a lengthy process. Before achieving any concrete results, Zhi doesn't plan to reveal any of his ideas to Alwyn. His gaze swept over Alwyn. Bloodstains dirtied his hair, face, and combat suit. Since the wound on Alwyn's back has healed, "Alwyn, do you want to take a bath?" He was quite satisfied with the suggestion. No beautiful female insect can tolerate being dirty. They all prefer to be clean and tidy. From what he knew, Alwyn even had a slight case of misophobia. Alwyn had his back to Zhi and said in a weary, mocking tone, "How about it? Letting me go?" Zhi was stumped by the question. Of course, he was very willing to let Alwyn go. But the prerequisite was that Alwyn didn't have an expression like he wanted to kill him. Alwyn snorted coldly, shifted his body slightly, and stopped talking. Zhi realized he had created a problem for himself. How about holding Alwyn and taking him into the bathroom to help him wash? So perverted. Zhi immediately dismissed the thought. But then, he suddenly thought of a feasible method. Immediately turned and left. Alwyn, with his back to Zhi, heard the sound of footsteps moving away, and thought Zili found him dirty, which was why he didn't touch him. Now, tricking him into taking a bath. What are you trying to do? It's easy to imagine. The tender feelings that were momentarily healed by Zili's treatment of the injuries vanished without a trace once again. After a short while, Zili brought a basin of water and placed it by the bedside. How about I help you? What's wrong now? Zili leaned in to look at Alvin, suddenly noticing that the little butterfly's eyes were red. He scratched his head in confusion. Then he pressed one knee against the headboard and began to undo Alvin's handcuffs. You need to behave. I don't want to tie you up either. The handcuffs on the bedside. Unlocking the female ring handcuffs, separating Alvin's hands. Regaining freedom. Zili was just about to undo Alvin's ankle chains, but as soon as he turned around, he was pushed down onto the bed. Fuck, he reflexively reached out and slapped Alvin's butt hard. Taking advantage of Alvin trembling and going soft in his arms, he immediately tied Alvin's hands back up. Alvin's cheeks were flushed, biting his lower lip tightly. He shot a resentful glance at Zili. Zili guiltily put his hands behind his back, feeling that he really had been too harsh on the butterfly. He coughed violently, and after a moment, he said, "Forget about taking a bath. I'll wipe you down. If you don't refuse, I'll take it as consent." But even as the heat from the towel faded in his hands, he still couldn't bring himself to start for a long time. He swallowed hard, constantly watching for any change in Alvin's expression. Maybe we shouldn't wash after all. Just stay dirty like this. Alvin's red-rimmed eyes were tinged with the trace of moisture. Female insects all love cleanliness. Alvin was naturally no exception. Zili had a headache. If this bath couldn't be completed, he was afraid Alvin would probably cry for him to see. He stared at the combat suit on Alvin's body. Alvin's hands and feet were bound. He definitely couldn't take off his clothes normally. Wait for me a moment. Then he returned to his own room. In the drawer of the bedside table, he rummaged out a micro-laser knife shaped like a scalpel. He picked up the scalpel. With practiced movements, he slid it along Alvin's elegant shoulder and neckline. Following this direction, he cut open the clothing on the arms. His large hand held a towel rack, gently wiping the corner of Alvin's forehead. Moving down along the delicate cheek, he wiped away patches of bloodstains. Zili wiped very carefully. He changed the water several times. He sat by the bed, lifting strands of icy blue long hair, cleaning them one by one. At this time, Alvin's hands and feet were freed. He curled his body, nestling against the scant clothing, wishing he could revert to a butterfly pupa state, to escape the overwhelming sense of immersion that made him ill at ease. Where was this damned bear insect touching? Alvin had almost lost the courage to resist. Whenever he mustered the strength to fight back, this damned bear insect would spank his buttocks. The burning sensation made him feel ashamed, angry, and wish for death. What was even more unspeakable was that, every time he finally gathered some strength, will be beaten into disarray. The heavier the beating, the weaker and more limp his limbs become. It's even more terrifying than rigor mortis. Pale fingertips, containing vast amounts of psychic energy, roamed over his body. Warm breath sprayed against his back, a touch so faint it was almost imperceptible, causing him to uncontrollably fall into a new round of trembling. He smiled self-deprecatingly. What is this? The spiritual comfort that female insects crave but cannot obtain. Yet he avoids it like the plague. His blue eyes looked towards the door. The escape route inevitably must pass that damned bear insect. And Alvin did not want the slightest contact with the other party for even a moment. He turned his head to look at the window, weighing the situation where his limbs couldn't muster any strength. Would it be faster for him to climb onto the windowsill and jump down, or for that bear insect to rush over and grab him faster? The bigger problem was, he was extremely weak at this moment. After jumping from the third floor, whether he would be safe and sound. And then, withstand the subsequent full-force pursuit by the Bear Insect Protection Association. Thinking of this, Alwyn quickly made a decision to heal his injuries first. He reached out and grabbed the disheveled thin quilt, warily looked at the bear child before him, used considerable effort to wrap the quilt around himself. Zili saw Alwyn like a little kitten, slowly climbed down from the bed, stepped forward to offer help, but noticed that Alwyn, wrapped in the quilt, clearly shrank back. He had just taken a step forward, but then retreated. "Alvin, where are you going?" Zili silently blocked the direction of the door. Whether for the sake of world peace, or out of personal selfishness, he didn't want Alvin to leave this place. At least until Alvin's injuries were completely healed. Staying here temporarily was the safest. Alvin stared warily at Zili. After confirming that the other had no intention of approaching, he quickened his pace. His silvery white jade-like feet stepped on the fluffy carpet. He walked too hastily, stumbled a little. Zili tensely stepped forward, but had to retreat again. He helplessly raised his hands and coaxed, "I won't go over." Alvin quickly steadied himself by holding onto the cage, regaining his balance. Then, without hesitation, he slipped into the cage. With a clang, the iron door was pulled shut, making a dull thud upon impact. Zili looked at the tightly closed cage with a strange expression. His gaze shifted, falling upon Alvin, who was wrapped in a blanket. "Have I bullied the little butterfly too harshly? Alvin, come out and talk, okay?" After Zili opened the cage door, he immediately took 2 steps back, showing sufficient sincerity. Alvin warily moved to the side of the cage. With a clatter, he slammed the iron door shut again heavily. Seeing this scene, Zili felt both amused and exasperated. "The wound on your back has healed, but we still need to observe it for a while. It's cold at night, better go sleep in the bed." Saying this, Zili tore off a sticky note from the desk, then walked to the side of the cage, stuck the note onto the electronic lock. He said gently, "This is the password. You can come out anytime you want. I promised I would let you go." His gaze met Alvin's indifferent line of sight, said seriously, "But leave after you've recovered from your injuries. That's what we all think, right?" Alvin glanced sideways, pulled the quilt up higher, also covering the pair of blue eyes that were revealed. "Don't even think about tricking me into bed." Hearing this, Zili didn't know whether to laugh or cry. "Fine, you can stay wherever you want, since we've reached an agreement. From now on, we're roommates." He guiltily scanned the room, turned and left. Now only Alvin remained in the room. The large room instantly seemed empty and desolate. The gloomy large iron cage placed within the luxurious room appeared so out of place. Alvin was hidden in the darkness, hugged his bent legs, resting his chin on his knees. His already somewhat unsteady breathing rhythm faintly became short and fragmented. Alvin clutched the quilt, covered his face. Soon, a patch of the quilt became damp. From under the pulled-up thin quilt, a pair of silvery white jade feet were exposed. Not long after, Zili dragged 2 thick tatami mats into the room. Alvin's sorrowful mood, the strange actions of Zili immediately dispersed the tension. Here, Zili carried 2 tatami mats into the cage, stacked them 2 layers high. This cage was quite large. After placing 2 large tatami mats inside, there was still about half a meter of space left. Zili patted the top of the tatami mats, dust that didn't actually exist. He turned to look at the little butterfly huddled in the corner. "Will you come up by yourself, or shall I carry you up? Of course, it would be even better if you're willing to sleep on the bed." Alwyn remained unmoved. Zili shifted the direction of his foot. Before he could take a step, he saw the beautiful female insect reluctantly moving along the edge of the cage and climbing onto the tatami mats. Zili tightened the corners of his mouth. Without even closing the cage door, he turned and left the room. Alwyn angrily climbed down from the tatami mats. But as soon as he reached the cage door, he heard footsteps approaching, quickly closed the cage door, and shrank back into the corner. He saw Zili carrying 2 thick cotton quilts, reopened the cage door, placed the 2 thick cotton quilts on top of the tatami mats. After spreading out the quilts, before he could say anything, the little butterfly voluntarily crawled back into the pile of quilts. He found it amusing inwardly. After several trips back and forth, he placed 2 more quilts for covering inside the cage, changed the bed sheets in the room to new ones, also replaced the blankets with new ones. After finishing all this, he wiped the corner of his forehead and muttered to himself about the light sweat. Need to find a way to make money. Hire a reliable housekeeper, responsible for the heavy housework at home. Before crossing over, Zili's family circumstances were quite good. He had never done much housework since childhood. Now, with this body that gets out of breath after just a few steps, all this really wore him out. He glanced back at Alwyn, who had hidden under the blanket. He slapped his forehead. So that's what he forgot, something very important. A moment later, he went out and came back again. A large pile of clothes hung on the crossbar of the cage. I don't know what style of clothes you like. Pick whatever you like to wear. My size is a bit larger, so they might be a little loose. I'll buy you properly fitting ones in a few days. Alwyn furrowed his brows tightly. He didn't know what tricks this bear was playing. Everything the other party was doing wasn't something a bear would do. Moreover, the other's movements were clumsy. Clearly not a bug accustomed to such tasks. From Zili bustling about, to the other bringing in clothes from nearly the entire wardrobe, Alwyn struggled to think for a long time. His brows furrowed tighter and tighter. In the end, he decided to give up thinking. Anyway, once he recovered from his injuries, he would leave this place. While Zili was busy, he observed the changes in Alwyn's expression. This incredibly powerful, but clearly emotionally unintelligent, major villain looked like his CPU was about to overload again. He really is just an adorable, silly little butterfly. At night, he surveyed the room, now cozy and warm. No wonder so many people who keep cats and dogs become cat slaves, dog slaves. Setting up a room for the pet brought back to the new home gives a great sense of fulfillment from nurturing. He placed the medical kit into the cage, asked if there were other injuries on the body. Apply medicine yourself. Alwyn glanced at him coldly. A large hand landed on Alwyn's furry head. Rubbed it, Zili said in an unquestionable tone. You have 1 hour to apply the medicine. Get dressed. Otherwise, I'd be happy to help. After Zili left, Alwyn finally came out of the cage. He walked into the bathroom. This room is usually unoccupied, and the bathroom shows no signs of use. He overturned the trash can, spilling out a pile of fabric cut into pieces. Seeing his combat suit sliced to shreds, his expression cooled a few degrees. Casually picked up a few fragments and squeezed them. He shook his head, threw the scraps back into the trash can, then picked up a few more pieces of fabric. Soon, Alwyn's face showed delight. He concealed the fabric in his palm, returned to the room. The thin fabric actually had a hidden layer. He took out a piece from it, a fiber mesh as thin as a cicada's wing, then pressed the mesh onto the skin of the back of his hand. Moments later, Alwyn's eyes darkened slightly. His subordinate's urgent voice sounded in his ear. That fiber mesh was actually a communication device Zili would never have imagined. Inside Jun C's combat suit, there was actually a hidden backup communication device. At this moment, outside the villa, Alvin's subordinates finally made contact with him. Captain, are you all right now? If we still couldn't get any news from you, we were prepared to charge into the villa to rescue you. They were afraid Alvin would be harmed, so they had followed him all the way here. They originally thought that Zili only treated Alvin as a tool for making money. Who would have thought, unexpectedly, he provided Alvin with prolonged mental soothing. The three military operatives hesitated. Should they stand by or forcibly rescue him? In the end, they couldn't reach a conclusion. Over here, Alvin's eyes darkened slightly. Then he gently tapped his wrist a few times, signaling them to retreat. He turned his head to look out the window, and sure enough, saw three dark figures quietly withdrawing. He withdrew his gaze, after receiving Zi Li's mental soothing. He felt his physical strength gradually recovering. Then he walked into the bathroom, took a simple shower. Afterwards, he returned to the cage. Before his eyes was a dazzling array of luxurious clothing. He had only seen those useless bear worms wear such things in his memory. His slender fingertips brushed past one expensive, gorgeous robe after another. Suddenly, his fingertips stopped at one particular item. It was a very skimpy, sky-blue nightgown. Alvin blinked a couple of times, rarely showing a confused, dazed expression. He noticed the embroidered pattern. It was a beautiful butterfly design. His eyes suddenly lit up. But a sudden knock on the door immediately jolted Alvin awake. He abruptly looked up. It was Sherry walking in, holding a bowl of porridge. She placed the porridge on the table. His gaze drifted to the window, the floor, the ceiling. He just couldn't bring himself to look at her. Alvin, who had retreated into his shell, awkwardly ruffled his hair. Sorry. It's burnt, but fortunately, it's still edible. Let's not waste it. After saying that, Sherry left the guest room, closing the door behind her. He returned to his room, turned on his smart brain, and stared at the big zero in his account balance. Not a single cent. After saying that, he let out a heavy breath, consoling himself. At least there's no debt. After all, the original owner was a notorious gambler. It's a miracle that there isn't even a cent of debt. Sherry searched through the original owner's memories, and found that he had to thank his deceased, kind father for that. The original owner's kind father, Zi Lin, was a lieutenant general with illustrious military achievements. In the Empire's civil war that lasted for centuries, he played a pivotal role. During one mission, he died in battle protecting the trapped crown prince. The honor medal that was trampled and shattered for Alvin seems to have been awarded from that war. Zi Lin had taken precautions before his death, entrusting all his assets to a fund for management, operated by a company, with the proceeds deposited into a fixed account. Only a not-so-small monthly allowance is given to the original owner to sustain his livelihood. This large villa has also undergone notarization of the will. He can only inherit this villa after he turns 30. The purpose is to prevent the villa from being sold or mortgaged. Zi Li calculated the time. Until the next time he receives his allowance, there is still 1 week left. At this time, the refrigerator at home is stuffed full of beer and ice water. There is nothing else. Even the rice he used to cook porridge tonight was found by rummaging through the corner of the cupboard. Zi Li rubbed his face. The original owner could disregard face and run to various friends' houses to mooch meals. But he cares about face. Thinking of this, he opened the Elite Insect Forum to ask how to make money quickly. Of course, choose high-ranking military officers. Their annual salary is very high. As long as you are careful not to kill them, they can continue to make money for you. Under this comment, a group of male insects echoed in agreement. And there were also a large number of female insects, posting their own photos below, resumes, income, etc. They even turned the post into a matchmaking post. They are even willing to forego the status of a principal mate, and are content to be secondary mates or slave mates. Zi Li's mouth twitched. He isn't crazy, but this world has gone crazy. He was just about to close it. Who would have thought a customer service message suddenly popped up? Dear Zi Li, the big data monitoring for male insects has detected you may need funds for cash flow. Are you willing to sell your sperm? It can be done through direct sale or indirect sale. Of course, direct sale is highly recommended. This way, you can receive a generous reward. Seeing this, Zili only then realized there were earlier chat records. This customer service representative would come to ask a few times every month. The garden owner had refused several times. Indirect sale simply means selling sperm. But direct sale requires intimate contact. The only fortunate thing was, the garden owner was a gambler. His whole mind was fixated on gambling. Unlike other male insects, he didn't keep a large group of females to play with every day. No matter how persuasively the customer service representative advised, Zili still ruthlessly refused the proposal. With his current frail body, unless he was crazy, would he earn money by selling his body? If he had such an idea, he might as well live off someone else more comfortably. In the end, Zili did manage to live off someone else for a week. After inquiring with the president of the Pet Protection Association, he first obtained a small portion of funds from Alwyn. He had asked Alwyn in advance if he was willing to lend him money. Sure enough, Alwyn seemed to get angry again. But he still wrote an IOU to Alwyn, clearly stating the repayment date, promising to repay with principal and interest by the due date. The president indicated, Alwyn's assets are very substantial. It will take some time to transfer everything under his name. Zili didn't ask for details about this matter. He promised to return Alwyn's property to him. He doesn't intend to break his promise. Currently, borrowing money from Alwyn is just to get through the financial difficulties. The time for distributing pocket money is in the next couple of days. Although Zili feels that relying on parents for support is not very honorable, he isn't so fixated on pride that he'd suffer for it. On the first day, after Alwyn received mental comfort, he smoothly passed through the stiffening period and the wound on his back heel. But on the second day, it started to worsen again. In severe moments, he couldn't even get out of bed. Several times, from the surveillance, he saw Alwyn secretly wiping away tears from the pain. Sometimes he would also become inexplicably emotionally unstable and sulk. Zili didn't know how to cheer Alwyn up. But given the current situation, he absolutely would not let Alwyn stay home alone. He plans to wait until Alwyn's injury improves a bit, then discuss finding a job with him. Right now, Alwyn needs care, so it's not suitable for him to go out job hunting temporarily. During this time, he hasn't been idle either. He's been searching for job positions in the app, seeing what he can do in this world. But in the end, he discovered this world simply doesn't have job positions provided for tardigrades. Let's continue tomorrow. He stretched lazily. A glance at the time showed it was already past M. He simply tittied up the desk a bit. He didn't touch the broken jade pieces that were being repaired. He got up and fell headfirst onto the bed to sleep. Sleepiness quickly washed over him. But Zili, lying on the bed, stubbornly forced his eyelids to stay open. He was somewhat unwilling to enter dreamland. His gaze fell upon that pair of magnificent, royal blue wings mounted as a specimen on the wall. The spread-out wings seemed as if they could flutter and fly away at any moment. He stared, mesmerized, his mind starting to wander again, unbounded, thinking about all sorts of random, chaotic things. Just sleep. He pulled the quilt over his head, hoping only not to have any more strange dreams tonight. Because he was overly tired, the sound of even breathing soon filled the room. A faint floral fragrance spread along with the spiritual benefits, like a sea of flowers blooming in an instant, madly occupying every corner of the room. Zili stood in the vast, boundless sea of flowers and let out a helpless sigh. After coming to this world, he had this dream every single night. But the developments within the dream were gradually spiraling out of control. A pair of magnificent, shimmering blue wings fluttered gracefully, sweeping past before his eyes. He involuntarily followed that beautiful blue morpha butterfly. The next second, the small royal blue wings grew into enormous wings larger than a person. They flapped elegantly a few times, then folded together, enveloping Zhi Li along with them. Zhi Li was overwhelmed by the sudden weight and fell down. Staggering backward, he fell onto the grass. He held Alwyn, who was pressing down on him. The touch beneath his hands was delicate and silky smooth. Alwyn was only wearing a thin nightgown. Zhi Li listened to the thumping heartbeat, but the wings before his eyes were like withered leaves sinking into late autumn, withering away with the rapidly fading vitality. Zhi Li's heart tightened. He subconsciously held Alwyn tighter, wanting to keep Alwyn, but he couldn't make a sound. Alwyn rested his chin in the hollow of Zhi Li's shoulder, his voice like timid, scattered pearls, falling beside Zhi Li's ear. "Will you hit me?" Zhi Li shook his head, wanting to say he wouldn't hit her anymore, but he couldn't say anything. Alwyn, angry, bit Zhi Li. Zhi Li suddenly woke up. Sitting up in annoyance, he covered his face, let out a helpless sigh, cleaned up simply with the tissue, then ran to the bathroom to take a cold shower. He wondered if Alwyn wore a nightgown to sleep. The surveillance feed turned on. The guest room next door was completely silent. The bed was empty. Alwyn still refused to come out of the cage. His gaze turned toward the cage. He narrowed his eyes slightly, puzzled that there was no one in the cage either. She had run away. Seeing this, Zhi Li quickly grabbed his robe and walked over to the next guest room. The room was pitch black. By the faint moonlight, he could see the cage. The door was wide open, and no one was seen inside. He lifted the blanket and felt around. There was still some residual warmth. They had just run off not long ago. Zhi Li's first reaction wasn't anger, but worry. The little butterfly he had worked so hard to save. His injury had just flared up again 2 days ago. How could he have suddenly run off? The suppression collar around Alwyn's neck. Only he could remove it. Any other method of forcing it open would activate the self-destruct device. There was a tracking device on the suppression collar. He opened his smart brain to check the location. While considering whether to call the police, Zhi Li was extremely anxious until the light screen popped up with Alwyn's location. The red dot was Alwyn's position. The green dot was his position. At this moment, the 2 dots were almost overlapping. Simultaneously, a soft clicking sound was heard. The bathroom door was open. Alwyn was damp all over. A large bath towel was draped over his shoulders. As he walked out, he tugged a corner of the towel to dry his long hair. The injury on his back had flared up before. He was feverish for 2 days and sweated profusely. As soon as the fever subsided, he sneaked off to the bathroom to bathe. This bear wouldn't allow him to bathe right after his fever broke. He would even monitor him at night. This time, he had calculated that the other was already asleep at this hour. So he sneaked off to bathe. Seeing Zhi Li, he defensively ran back into his cage and locked the cage door. Seeing this, Zhi Li awkwardly ruffled his own hair. In the past, he would always knock before entering Alwyn's room. But this time, he was in such a hurry that he forgot. He couldn't help but scratch his head in embarrassment. "I just came to check on you. Sleep well, good night." The room was pitch black at this moment. Alwyn couldn't clearly see Zhi Li's face. Having noticed that the bear was monitoring him, he frowned, somewhat displeased. The next day, Zhi Li woke up with heavy dark circles under his eyes. Because he was misunderstood by Alwyn, he had barely slept well all night. Now, he sat motionless on the bed, slowly booting up. He ran a hand through his messy hair, wondering what to make for breakfast today. There were no servants at home. Alwyn wouldn't even come out of his cage, so he naturally took on the cooking duties. Early autumn in the capital was colder than expected. It seemed they were in for a harsh winter. He planned to buy some winter clothes for Alwyn. There was also an announcement from Elle reminding bear insects to start hoarding food at home. After late autumn, it's advised not to go out unless necessary. If you must go out, you can contact the Bear Insect Protection Association. They will send an insect to accompany and protect you during your trip. This large, pitted villa was practically bare, unable to go out for several months. Zili needed to buy quite a few things, but his meager pocket money wasn't enough for him to splurge. So after changing his clothes, he skillfully wrote an IOU, preparing to discuss borrowing money with Alvin. But when he knocked and entered the guest room, the cage door was closed, but the butterfly inside was gone again. Zili's heart suddenly sank. He hurriedly pushed open the bathroom door. Alwyn wasn't in the bathroom either. Then he circled around the large villa again. He searched every room. There was no sign of Alwyn. He really ran away. Zili quickly opened his smart brain, dialed the police's number. "Hello, do you need to report a case?" This was a voice communication. The voice on the other end was gentle and polite. "It should be a female insect," Zili said. "My butterfly, female lord, is missing. Can you help find him?" "Of course. We will use all our resources to recover your private property." Zili spoke worriedly. "He is injured. Please don't hurt him." During the capture, the other side laughed and said, "We understand. You have absolute disciplinary rights. You can personally punish your own private property." Zili thought these words sounded strange, but there was no point in explaining. Achieving the goal was enough. After hanging up the communication, he sat on the edge of the bed. His head hung low, rubbed his face, said helplessly, "Why don't you believe me? I already promised I wouldn't hit you anymore." Suddenly, he bent over. Couldn't stop coughing. A massive mental power tore through his body. Zili's vision went black. He fell to the ground. After a good while, he struggled to get up. Only then did he hear the communication request from the AI. Simultaneously, the villa's doorbell rang. He opened the main door. The chairman of the monitoring committee was standing sternly behind the door. Behind him, two sergeants were carrying a makeshift stretcher. Lying on the stretcher was Alwyn, on the verge of death. Alwyn's escape had ended in failure, and had been brought back on a makeshift stretcher by the two sergeants. Zili trembled as he took out the pills he carried with him, and swallowed them. He opened the door to the room, picked up the weak and immobile Alwyn, then hoarsely apologized to the chairman and the others outside the door. "Please wait downstairs, everyone. We can discuss matters later. I need to punish this little one first." After saying that, Zili slammed the door shut. Since the chairman of the Protection Association had come to visit, he had to put on a show to send those bugs away. Otherwise, they would all be in big trouble. Zili swallowed hard, then placed his palm on Alwyn's delicate nape. "Be good," screamed loudly a few times. Hearing this, Alwyn bit his lip tightly and glared fiercely at Zili, clearly showing 1,000 reluctances. This put Zili in a difficult position. "Unwilling to scream yourself? Then I'll have to help you." As the words fell, his lips landed on Alwyn's shoulder. Zili bit down hard. Only, it seemed he might have used a bit too much force. He actually broke the skin with his bite. His tongue tasted a faint metallic tang. Alwyn trembled violently in his embrace, then let out a sob. The lips of this beast pressed against his skin were so scorching he couldn't bear it. Finally, Alwyn, holding back tears, pleaded for mercy. "No more. Sob, no more. His back hurt so much. His shoulders hurt so much." Though Alwyn cried out for it to stop, his body inexplicably responded in cooperation. "This damned beast." His hands unconsciously reached out, clutching Shelly tightly, rubbing against him like an insatiable little kitten. After expelling a large amount of mental energy, Shelly suddenly felt a wave of physical relief. He sat up, seeing Alwyn's arms tightly wrapped around his neck, with no intention of letting go at all. Helpless, he could only pick up Alwyn and carry him into the cage. "You'll have to endure this for now. Be good." Outside the room, the guildmaster was practically pressed against the door, eyes wide open. The more he listened, the more alarmed he became. He had clearly heard that brutal military dagger, crying and begging for mercy. Alwyn, the Empire's cold-blooded, merciless ultimate weapon, had actually been beaten to tears. The door suddenly opened, startling the guildmaster, causing him to stumble. He grabbed the doorframe, barely managing to steady himself. He stood slightly dazed, meeting Shelley's gentle gaze, but his eyes secretly slipped past Shelley, peering into the room. That huge cage is placid in the center of the room. Luxurious garments hung across half the cage, blocking most of the view inside the cage. The association president's heart skipped a beat. Zi Li Shongzi. Has Alvin been kept and raised in a cage all along? And demands that Alvin can only wear his clothes. Does he enjoy watching Alvin undress from outside the cage? Or does he prefer peeping through surveillance, so perverted? His gaze shifted. He saw Alvin's long hair disheveled like pizza, clothes on his body torn, hands tied to the cage, feet fastened to a locked cabinet, sitting on a raised tatami mat, piled up several layers behind. This must be even more thrilling to play with. The association president's eyes widened even more, noticing Alwyn's shoulder was bitten, leaving a deep, bloody gash. Alwyn leaned against the side of the cage. The corners of his eyes were flushed red. His body occasionally rubbed against the posts, his legs also frictioned together from time to time. This was the clear appearance of a female insect after receiving mental soothing. Often, at times like these, no matter what shameful things Zhang Zi demanded of the female insect, the female insect would be obedient, like a little white rabbit to be toyed with a twill. Using the mouth for mental soothing? It wasn't kissing, but rather biting or gnawing. The president held his breath. Subconsciously, he took half a step back. Although he strongly disapproved, he also understood why Alwyn had run away. I'm sorry. I've embarrassed myself in front of the president. Zi Li wiped the blood from the corner of his mouth with a smile. The president shuddered. He stammered, unable to utter a single word for a long time. Zi Li, however, acted as if nothing was wrong, his gaze sweeping over the exquisite gift bag in the president's hand. Is this a gift from the president? The president was taken aback. This was indeed a gift he had specially prepared. A small token of my esteem. Please don't dislike it. Thank you. Zi Li took it. It was a teaching pointer or rod. Even Zi Li, foolish as he might be, knew what this thing was. He looked inside the gift bag. There were other small gifts too, but they were all rather similar. Handcuffs, shackles. As he pulled them out from the void, they emitted a harsh registration or announcement sound. Thank you. Just in time to use it. After saying that, he prepared to close the door again, but was stopped by the chairman. He frowned and said, "Can't. Whatever it is, wait." The chairman awkwardly held onto the door panel. Zi Li, Kamako. Please give me half an hour. Afterwards, you can spend a full 10 minutes on your tasks. No, 5 minutes then. Zi Li looked impatient. It was the first time the chairman had seen such an uncooperative Kamako. But Kamako was eager to punish the escaped Saijin, which was understandable. He quickly stated the purpose of this visit, in an extremely concise and clear manner. We are here for the regular visit. Additionally, all of Owen's assets have been transferred to your name. Here are the relevant documents regarding the assets. Certificates. Zi Li took the chip from the chairman's hand, waved hand to stop. The president recited a long list like reading a menu. Assets and properties have been transferred. The visitation has also been completed. Then I'll continue being busy. Won't keep the president any longer. You can leave on your own. Remember to close the door for me. Before the association members could finish speaking, Zi Li turned and went upstairs. Everyone looked at each other. According to the usual practice, the visitation requires staying at the Zhangzi's home for a day. As long as the female insect shows any behavior that slightly defies the Zhangzi's intention, the association will charge the female insect with the crime. So every visitation day is a nightmare for female insects. Among them, the first visitation is particularly important. They must find some faults with Alwyn, then take him back to the Association for Enlightenment Education. But the current situation was completely unexpected by all insects. For a moment, they didn't know whether to leave or not, nor did they know what else to do. Several insects heard the whipping sounds from the room. All trembled. Soon, they heard Alwyn's helpless low curses. One insect spoke up. Alwyn is already so injured. Still beating him, does he really want to beat him to death and then play? Another insect offered his speculation. Actually, I think Li Shangzi has the right to personally discipline his own. Several insects listened to the movements in the room, all looking at the president uniformly. The president nodded with satisfaction. In the first visitation survey form, unprecedentedly scored 100 points. This is since the establishment of the Male Insect Protection Association. The first case where there was no need to take the female insect back for re-education. In the room, Li whipped the clothes in his hand to shreds with a lash. In the surveillance footage on the light screen in front, the association's members went downstairs and left. They even conveniently closed the main door for him. He breathed a sigh of relief. Turning back, he saw Alwyn's eyes reddening. That breath caught in his throat again. He jolted abruptly, placed the clothes he had shredded next to the tatami, unlocked Alwyn's handcuffs and leg irons. The locking function had not been activated. Worn on Alwyn, they looked more like beautiful accessories, causing no hindrance to movement. "You bastard!" Alwyn knelt on the tatami, hugging the tattered, luxurious clothes. Sniffling, Li felt awkward. "I've never seen you wear this one. Thought you didn't like it." All right. Now, he knew Alwyn liked it too much. Couldn't bear to wear it. No wonder when he ruined the clothes. Alwyn cooperated by crying out so miserably. He flusteredly retreated from the cage. "Don't run away again. What if next time you get directly taken to the association? Change your clothes first. I'll come back later to help treat your injuries." After saying that, he closed the door. He had just given Alwyn mental soothing. The wounds were healing quite quickly, but the mental soothing just now was too brief. "Later, we still need to continue with the soothing." High in the aisle, he coughed lightly. It seemed his mental power was too immense. This body is too frail. It couldn't withstand it, causing a reflex. So, no matter the reason, he had to perform mental soothing for Alwyn. Inside the room, Alwyn knelt on the tatami. Bowing, he hugged the clothes in his arms tighter, his forehead pressed against the bedding, his entire face buried in the quilt. His body stood up uncontrollably. But in his mind, it wasn't about the ruined clothes. He turned his face sideways, looking at the whip thrown on the ground. His breathing became rapid. The sparse sound of clothing rustled. Silver-white jade feet stepped on the cold iron plate. Alwyn picked up the whip from the ground, struck it once on his own leg. Tear, it hurt. Apart from the pain, there was no other sensation. A deeper confusion appeared on his face. Gripping the whip tightly, he walked towards Li's room. At this moment, Li stood before the enormous blue wings that had been made into a specimen. Li reached out, his fingertip gently touching the magnificent blue. He couldn't help but become somewhat entranced by the sight. Turning his head, he saw Alwyn standing at the door. Li happily went to greet him. "Alwyn, you've finally come out. Take a look. I made your wings into a specimen. Is it beautiful?" With a slap sound, Alwyn had already swung the whip in his hand. Li reached out his hand, snatching the whip that was aimed at himself. The curve of his smile had not yet faded from his lips, but the amusement in his eyes instantly vanished. He held the whip and pointed it at Alwyn's shoulder, then used the whip to lift a strand of long hair. "Alwyn, I promised I wouldn't hit you anymore. I don't want to bully you. And I don't want to make you cry. Don't give me this chance, okay?" By the time Alwyn regained his senses, He had already been carried to Zili's bed by the other. Those large hands covered the wounds on his back, giving him mental soothing. There were no further pleasurable acts. He turned his face to look at the giant eagle nailed to the wall. His icy gaze was tinged with a few indescribable emotions. This beast really likes his wings. Uncertain if he wants to humiliate him. Turning back, he buried his face in the blanket again. A faint floral scent drifted into his nostrils. This is Zili's bed. This is the blanket Zili has slept under. The clothes Alwyn is wearing are Zili's. When this beast's mental energy disperses, it also carries this pleasant fragrance. In his daze, he felt as if he were in a sea of flowers. His wings were warmed by the spring breeze, swaying freely in the wind. A wave of warmth brushed by his ear. "Alwyn, why did you leave? Didn't I say I would let you go after your injuries healed? I think you should believe me. Or is there some reason you absolutely had to leave?" Alwyn closed his eyes, refusing to answer, as a greater amount of spiritual power surged into his body. Even though he clenched his lips tightly to endure, he still couldn't suppress a muffled groan from escaping. This damned bear spirit was using mental soothing to bully him again. His entire body felt weak and numb, slightly trembling, using the last trace of willpower. He resisted his body that was on the verge of losing control. Zili lowered his gaze to look at this little butterfly. The other had collapsed softly on his bed, hands clutching his quilt, face flushed red, repeatedly asking if it was done yet. His Adam's apple bobbed, hoarsely replying that it wasn't done yet. The spiritual power within him was too immense. Even if he did nothing, just waking up from sleep, his spiritual power would skyrocket wildly. Yet this body of his simply couldn't bear too much spiritual power. It is precisely because of this. In other male insects found female insects, while being extremely stingy with mental energy, Zili was a special exception. After more than an hour, Zili stood in front of the cage holding porridge. "Come out and eat. It must be so uncomfortable being dirty." Alvin furrowed his brows tightly. He did not open the cage, nor did he show any intention of taking the porridge. Zili was helpless. He placed the porridge on the desk. "Then I'll go out. You can come out later and eat by yourself." He knew Alvin was really angry this time. Pondering what might have made Alvin angry. Was it because in front of the outsider insect, he tied Alvin up in the cage? Or because he bit the other's shoulder, almost making the little guy cry? Or perhaps he damaged the other person's favorite piece of clothing? It couldn't be because Alvin failed to escape and was caught, and then blamed on him, right? Sherry did call the police, but given the situation at the time, Alvin must have been caught before he even called the police. Or perhaps it was simply because of eating congee every day. Alvin got tired of it. Thinking of this, he walked to the cage and tapped the bars twice. "Once your injuries are better, we can do something else. Is it okay to eat light for now?" Alvin didn't respond, but just tugged at the blanket, wrapping himself more tightly. Seeing this, Sherry let out a bitter laugh and went to the kitchen to make a few light dishes. Although there wasn't much oil, the rare aroma of the dishes lured the little one out from under the covers. Sherry felt like he was really a novice at keeping pets. The little pet he brought home hid in the cage, refusing to come out. He spent a long time coaxing outside the cage, like a lunatic talking to himself. When Alvin was auctioned off, Sherry never imagined things would turn out this way. "You're supposed to be a ruthless villain." Sherry gave Alvin some private space. After releasing a large amount of mental energy, he felt as if an invisible weight had been lifted from his shoulders. His steps became much lighter. He sat downstairs, eating while opening the Golden Eagle Bear Major case, and searched the forums for over half an hour. "The meal is finished. Still haven't found an effective method. How can I make Alvin stop being angry?" He rested his chin on his hand and browsed randomly through the app. Suddenly, a live stream notification caught his attention. The live stream title, How to Please Your Partner Husband. A behavioral psychology professor answers your questions online. Viewer count has surpassed 10 million. 5 lucky viewers will be selected for free on-the-spot advice. Who'll be the 5 lucky word? Worms? Oh, my goodness, brothers and sisters. A little bear has entered the live stream. Let's bring him up. Zi Li clearly hadn't realized what was happening yet. As soon as he entered the live stream, his face took up the entire screen. The live stream, with over 10 million female insects watching, fell into a brief silence. A few seconds later, someone, no one knows who, sent the first comment, snapping all the insects out of their days. 3 seconds. I want all information about this little bear immediately. Zi Li accidentally entered a female insect learning live stream. His handsome appearance instantly captured the hearts of 10 million female insects. No one could believe that he was that F-grade useless male insect. 3 seconds. I want all information about this little bear immediately. Does the person above mean that S-grade useless male insect? Zi Lin? Not only is he ugly, but one of his eyes is actually blind. How could it be him? It's definitely not that waste Zi Lin. If it were me, I'd dance live on stream. Daryl. A male's real name comment. The appearance of another male made the live stream room lively again. The live stream's atmosphere was quickly thrown off track. Bitterreal. More and more female insects became convinced that the one who mistakenly entered earlier was His Highness Joseph. Joseph is the main male lead of this book. The Empire's only S-grade male insect, His Highness Joseph. What are you doing in our live stream room? Could it be that His Highness Joseph has taken a liking to a female insect? At the same time, the royal hotline at the imperial capital's palace was flooded with calls. The female insects were frantically trying to confirm whether the male who just appeared in the live stream room was His Highness Joseph. The butler hurried over to report this matter. Your Highness, why did you go show your face in a live stream room that only female insects would enter? Joseph was bathed in the warm sunlight. He stared at the screenshot photo taken by netizens on the light screen. The blurry outline could not hide the deep facial features. It does look quite similar. If I had an older brother, he should look like this. Uncle Hans, please prepare an official royal statement for me. I want to issue it personally. Your Highness, should we condemn that male who impersonated you? No, Uncle Hans. He never said he wanted to impersonate me. Right now, I want to impersonate him. As he spoke, Joseph's fingertip slid across the light screen. The blurry picture was replaced by a secretly taken photo. Joseph's fingertip on the cheek of the young instructor in the photograph. Little Masa said distractedly, Alwyn, you must be having a really hard time right now. When you see my statement, you'll understand that this is my confession. Meanwhile, Zi Li, the one who caused all this chaos, had just closed the live stream when he found himself being doxxed like crazy. Those female insects had already started frantically professing their love to him. P.S. couple photos, wedding photos, etc. There was even one photoshopped to show a female insect forcibly kissing him. The terrifying ratio of one male to millions of females. Zi Li was experiencing it firsthand for the first time. Fortunately, a royal statement came just in time to bail him out. S-class male, His Highness Joseph, in order to better understand the admired Junzi Yingzi, came to the live stream to learn. So romantic. Regarding this, Zi Li was also somewhat surprised. At this point in time, the main characters haven't even met yet. How could there be any fondness for Jun Si? His eyes lit up. Took a big bite of the juicy gossip. Zi Li's urge to share instantly surged. The first person he thought of was Alwyn. Does Alwyn still remember the Crown Prince, whom he desperately saved in the Lungkartarwo Valley battle? He actually has a white moonlight. Alwyn flusteredly hid both hands behind his back, secretly turned off the light screen, subconsciously replied, "I know." Zi Li was stunned for a moment. Exclaimed with surprise, "You know?" Having transmigrated into this book, he was naturally quite interested in such hidden plot lines. Just as he was eagerly preparing to listen to the gossip, he saw Alwyn, with an unreadable expression, move closer to the cage. He carefully opened the cage. His eyes were full of wariness. Zi Li held his breath. "You like him. So back then, before risking your life to save him, you ran away. You also wanted to go see him. His white moonlight is you. But if he really liked you, how could he possibly be completely indifferent to your matters?" Zi Li saw the expression Alvin was trying hard to conceal something. Confirmed his own speculation. He felt it was very necessary for him to keep a close eye on this little one whose combat power is off the charts, but whose emotional intelligence tops out at 40. He pulled Alvin back to sit on the sofa, reached out and tapped the other's head. "You little fool, still suffering from love obsession? Let's be clear, you can like anyone. Only Joseph is not allowed." Zi Li ruffled his own hair, unaccountably irritable. "But he is Alvin," angrily covered his tingling head. Accused, "You promised not to use mental soothing." "Hit me?" Zi Li chuckled lightly. "You can believe the words of a male insect?" Alvin angrily scolded, shameless. He pounced on Zi Li, pushing him down on the sofa, straddling the other's body. After a period of effort, finally made, Alvin let down his guard. Step out of the cage. Alvin didn't often leave the guest room, but he would come out on time for 3 meals a day. After all, disobedience leads to a beating. Zi Li kept his promise. Except for necessary treatment times, he didn't forcibly give Alvin mental soothing again. Zi Li walked into the kitchen, opened the refrigerator, turned around and see Alvin's tattoo. Followed over. Alvin lay by the door, unwilling to come closer, but not leaving either. Like a proud little kitten, if you go to tease it, it will disdainfully avoid you. But if you walk away and ignore it, it will softly stick close and tease you a few times. He picks out ingredients from the refrigerator, takes out fresh fish. Here's a gulp swallowing sound behind him. He then takes out green peppers. Here's a T-esque sound from behind. Then he tightens the corners of his mouth, pulls out carrots and broccoli, turns around to face Alvin's fallen face, chuckles softly, and asks which takeout he wants to order today. Alvin's cheeks flush slightly, coldly refuses to be teased. Sherry picks out a few more types of meat. There are many varieties, but the portions are small, only for the two of them to eat. Alvin's appetite isn't big either. In order to fatten up this little butterfly, he cooks different dishes every day, varying the styles. Alvin tastes a bit of this and a bit of that, and can still eat quite a lot. Seeing Alvin's happy expression when he eats a dish he likes, and when he eats something he doesn't like, he disdainfully, secretly throws it away. He can only sigh. This little butterfly is really not easy to raise. Alvin sees Sherry close the refrigerator, anxiously takes half a step forward, then pulls back towards Sherry, beats the eggs, puts them in a bowl, starts stirring. "Let me make this clear first. No sneak attacks on me while I'm cooking." Hearing this, Alvin obediently walked to the living room. Alvin sat on the sofa randomly changing channels. There was nothing specific he wanted to watch. Sometimes when he saw something military related, he would linger a bit longer. In the kitchen, Zi Li could finally focus on cooking. He nonchalantly closed the kitchen door, clenched a fist and pressed it against his lips, and started coughing violently. In the dim room at midnight, only a desk lamp was on. The warm yellow light illuminated a corner of the desk. The light flickered, then dimmed a bit more. Zi Li stretched, pulled over a piece of white cloth to cover the shattered jade on the desk, and walked towards the walk-in closet. Pushed open the sliding door of the walk-in closet. A black figure flashed before his eyes and hid inside the wardrobe. He was startled. The swaying clothes hangers were quickly stilled, but the crisp jingling sound persisted for a few more seconds. Icy blue long hair was tangled on a clothes hanger, seemed like it was stuck. Zhi burst out laughing. He had heard Alvin say before that he was the offensive type, not good at lurking. He originally thought Alvin was just being modest. Now, it seemed it was indeed true. Zhi pretended not to see Alvin, turned and walked towards the bathroom. Soon the jingling sound followed again. Zhi was very curious. What exactly did Alvin want to do? For Zhi, after half a month off getting along, Alvin is always on guard against his mental soothing. He's really different from those female insects on the forum who are in an uproar and frantically want to dox him. Sherry unfastens the last button of the shirt and pulls it down to his elbows. A well-proportioned, muscular physique. Alvin sizes up Sherry and confirms one thing. This is definitely not the kind of body that a worthless F-grade male insect would possess. Sherry's mental energy is terrifyingly vast, as if it would never run dry. Back when he saved Joseph, he entered his first petrification period without realizing it. It was Joseph who took the initiative to perform mental soothing on him, spending a long time helping him get through his first petrification period. Alvin thought that Zhi's mental power was stronger than Joseph's, and much stronger. The tardigrade's body is too weak. It simply cannot withstand such immense mental power. For the Empire to produce an S-class tardigrade like Joseph is already a miracle. How could there possibly be a super S-class tardigrade? At that moment, a shirt flew towards his face. It hit Alvin on the head. Alvin snapped back to reality. While pulling the shirt off his head, he tentatively asked, "Are you an S-class tardigrade?" Unbeknownst to him, Zhi placed his hands on his belt, and doing it as he took it off, and suggested, "Why don't you come over and help me check?" Besides appearance, which can be used to roughly judge a tardigrade's rank, there is another widely circulated method of judgment. A metallic click. The sound of a collision rang out. In his ears was that tardigrade's teasing voice. Besides, the face looking here is more accurate. Alvin then understood Zhi's meaning. He turned away, his face flushed pink, and angrily shouted, "Shameless." In the bathroom, Zhi pressed his forehead against the cold wall. The violent coughing continued. By the time he came out of the bathroom, it was already late at night. His complexion was even paler than usual. He lay down on the bed, pulled the covers over himself, and went to sleep. At the same time, Zhi's door made a muffled click sound. A few strands of blue hair drifted past the door crack. Alvin slowly pushed the door open and sneaked into the room. The water cup placed on the bedside table next to the bed was quietly moved to a corner. A new glass of water replaced the one in its original position. This is a glass of strong liquor that tastes no different from cold water. Alvin half knelt on the ground, clutching the pill in his hand tightly. He leaned sideways against the bedside, reaching his hand under the blanket to feel around. He remembered that this bear always carried medicine with him, usually kept in his trouser pocket. In the pitch darkness, his hand under the blanket paused for a moment. Blushing, he continued feeling downward. His fingertips slid downward from the chest. No pocket was found on the abdomen. Alvin's face burned bright red. He cursed, calling him a pervert. Flustered, he tried to pull his hand back, but the back of his hand was pressed down firmly. Zhi reflexively grabbed the hand touching him. He suddenly woke up, turning his head to look at the little fellow kneeling by the bed. He asked in confusion, "Alvin?" Alvin was overwhelmed with shame and anger. The burning heat in his palm was almost melting him. Fierce mental soothing. Waves after waves drilled into his body, making him too weak to even pull his hand back. Zhi narrowed his eyes slightly. Just as he was about to say something, he suddenly started coughing violently. Alvin saw Zhi, pointing at the coat on the clothes rack. Amid coughs, he shouted, "Medicine!" Alwyn hurried over, pulled out the portion medicine from the pocket, poured it into his palm, mixed it with that white pill, and handed them together to the other. Zhi sat up, took the medicine with one hand and poured it into his mouth. He picked up the water glass from the bedside table, drank most of the water in the glass. He shook his head, picked up the white pill that had fallen onto the quilt. One pill dropped. Alvin held his breath. In the interval, he brought the accidentally dropped sedative pill to his mouth. Clatter, the water glass fell to the floor. Plop, the pill dropped into the spilled clear liquid. Alvin shuddered violently. His scalp tingled with numbness. He turned and ran. But just as his hand gripped the doorknob, a low warning came from behind him. "Come here." His clenched fist trembled slightly. No, his entire body was trembling, as if an invisible, large nail had pierced through his body, nailing him in place. Years of combat instinct made him realize that Zhi at this moment was different from usual. Very dangerous escape was impossible. Zhi got out of bed naked, stepped on the broken glass, yet felt no pain at all. While walking towards the door, he left behind chilling, bloody footprints on the floor behind him. He embraced Alvin from behind, holding him close, and said with abnormal tenderness, "Don't be afraid." He sat Alvin down on the specimen frame with no protective glass. His pale fingertips slid from the veins on Alvin's arm, all the way down to the prominent artery at his wrist. Alvin really liked the newly changed shiny silver handcuffs inlaid with crushed diamonds. Zhi liked them too. Zhi undid the handcuff's movable clasp with a sudden forceful motion, pressing Alwyn's wrist against the shimmering blue wing. The handcuffs automatically contracted, adhering to the wall surface, locking Alwyn's wrist firmly in place. Zhi's exhaled breath carried a strong alcoholic scent, not gentle like usual, like a bloodthirsty demon imprisoned in an abyss, finally seeing the light of day again. "Alwyn, can't you just not run?" His lips pressed close to Alwyn's lips, he said with deep regret. "If only I could make you into a specimen, then you wouldn't run away." His thin lips lightly imprinted on Alwyn's lips. A brief touch, then parted. Zhi's knuckles pressed against the delicate skin, hooked onto a ring and pulled sharply, bringing the little one into his embrace. A low, hoarse, feminine voice, pervaded by a chilling, flute-like resonance. "What punishment do you want?" Zhi was drunk, and heavily so. Alwyn never expected that Zhi would seem like a completely different person after getting drunk. The mental energy within his body seemed to have finally found a chance to wantonly vent, pouring out insatiably. "Do you want me to hit you? Or kiss you?" Zhi kissed Alwyn's lips with extreme tenderness. Alwyn was almost suffocating. This beast kept deepening the kiss. It felt like he wanted to devour him completely. His mind went blank, not understanding why the other was kissing him. Is this a punishment? So uncomfortable, the excessive mental soothing. He trembled violently all over, unable to control himself. His insect patterns were going berserk. The overexcited insect patterns broke through the skin, blood vessels, desperately rushing towards the place with the strongest spiritual soothing. His back hurt so much. This damn bear cub, knowing full well that his wings had already been removed, yet still pressed him in front of the wings made into specimens. Was it to mock his inability to spread his wings when being toyed with? This appearance was simply utterly ugly. Tears fell silently. "Don't cry." Zhi licking lifted Alwyn's face, kissed away the tears falling like a broken string of pearls, his heart aching. Alwyn is not allowed to cry. Hearing this, Alwyn broke down. "You've won. Are you satisfied now? Why don't you just kill me? Hang me here and make me into a specimen." "No, I can't bear to." Zhi tirelessly kissed away the tears on Alwyn's cheeks. "Do you like Joseph that much? You insist on going to find him. Alwyn is not allowed to like him. Zili toyed with Alwyn's silvery white jade-like feet, said coldly. Alwyn curled his toes. His intermittent voice was like a broken music box. And no, it's not. Bastard. Stop touching. Zili stopped his actions, held Alwyn's feet in his palms, laughed lowly and said, I'll give you one more chance to answer me. Why did you run? Think carefully before you speak. Alwyn was so angry he was about to die. You're this drunk. Would saying anything be useful? I don't like Joseph at all. After speaking, Shirley narrowed her eyes slightly. So it's him who likes you. Alwyn turned his face away, biting his lip tightly without saying a word. With a sharp slap, Alwyn covered his burning buttocks, yet his body uncontrollably burrowed into Shirley's embrace. You bastard! He desperately scrambled for the limited vocabulary in his mind, preparing to curse Shirley out. But when he looked up and met those blood-red eyes, his throat seemed to be choked, unable to utter another word. Alwyn's scalp tingled with numbness, instinctively wanting to escape. But the next second, he felt his body become weightless, followed by a dizzying spin before his eyes. He was carried to the bed. Warm lips descended. An unreasonable invasion. 10 minutes, 20 minutes, half an hour passed. Alwyn desperately clawed at Shirley's back, trying to push this beast away, only to provoke even more unrestrained plundering. And the more he resisted, the more addictive the spanking became. Military training doesn't teach how to please a beast as a pet. Alwyn had no kissing skills, didn't even know how to catch his breath. He was about to suffocate when Shirley felt the little one in his arms finally quiet down. He released the other's lips, now swollen and red from the friction. He pushed his fingers into Alwyn's mouth, stirring and playing with it. What a pity, if made into a specimen, it would definitely become my most satisfying collection. Zili picked up the unconscious Alvin and held him, leaning against the headboard. He meticulously tended to his specimens. His warm, deep voice carried a hint of imperceptible meaning. Alvin, how could you let Joseph fall for you? That guy is a lunatic. He will definitely come to take you away. What should we do about this? Zili then kissed Alvin's swollen lips. He chuckled softly and said, I'll hide you at home for a lifetime. When Alvin woke up in bed, he found himself being held in Zili's arms. Zili, who was asleep, had his brows tightly furrowed, as if trapped in some nightmare. Alvin slowly sat up, reached out and gripped the neck of this damned bastard. His eyes were filled with fierceness. Suddenly, an exquisitely braided pigtail slipped from his shoulder to his chest, accompanied by the clear sound of a bell. His movements halted, staring at the hair that Zili had woven into a beautiful braid. Alvin's eyes slightly lit up, but then he suppressed his joy. Bastard! Alvin cursed under his breath, released his hand, gazed at Zili's face, which could only be described as perfect. I swear, next time we meet, I will kill you. A faint sound was heard. Alvin slowly climbed down from the bed, noticed the bloodstains covering the bed, and the translucent glass fragments and bloody footprints on the floor. He bit his lip lightly, enduring the discomfort in his buttocks, gently moved to the foot of the bed, grabbed Zili's soles to check. Several pieces of glass were embedded in the soles. Some cuts were quite deep. Blood was still continuously seeping out, if left unattended. With that lousy body of Zili's, he was afraid he might lose too much blood. He would never wake up from this sleep again. It would be just fine if he died. Alvin grumbled angrily with his mouth, but his body was honest as he went to get the medical kit. Then he gently treated Zili's wounds for him. What a useless guy, Darwin muttered. Who would have thought half a glass of strong liquor could knock Zili out? And Zili hadn't woken up despite all this manhandling. How was he? The next afternoon, Zili woke up with a splitting headache, looking at the treated wounds on his feet. and the floor covered with glass shards and bloodstains. The bedding was also stained with blood. Zili's mind went blank. What happened? The cup of water that had fallen on the floor, under the scorching sun, was evaporating a pungent scent of liquor. Clearly, he was drunk last night. His incredibly relaxed body made him realize one thing. It seemed he had bullied Alvin again. The vast amount of mental energy accumulated over more than half a month had been cleared. He hurriedly climbed out of bed to look for Alvin. But the room was empty. There was nothing. Alvin had run away again. Zili tried to pull up the surveillance footage. But, as expected, all the surveillance records from last night had been deleted. He filtered through his memories. Among the friends the original owner knew, the one who was reliable and could repair surveillance equipment, was only Jeffrey. In the original story, Jeffrey was like an older brother protecting a younger brother, always looking out for the original owner everywhere. Although both were male insects, Jeffrey, being a B-grade male insect, lived a much better life than the original owner. After briefly explaining the situation, Jeffrey agreed without hesitation. I'll head over to your place right now. But I still need to take the surveillance equipment apart to see if it can be restored. On the other side, Alvin had already reunited with his 3 subordinates. Last night, they received a secret message from Alvin, preparing to escape together. Seeing Alvin's condition, the 3 subordinates couldn't help but be somewhat surprised. The captain's lip was split. His eyes were swollen like walnut kernels. And why did his sitting posture seem a bit off? They exchanged glances. Could it be that the captain was severely injured by that useless male insect? Their gazes turned to Alvin. They nudged each other, but none dared to step forward and ask. In any case, today's Alvin was very unusual. In their memory, Alvin only had 2 hairstyles, tying his hair up in a bunch during training and combat, and letting it hang loosely during non-combat states. But today, on both sides of his head, many thin braids were woven, each braids tied with a colored hair tie, adorned with small bells of different colors. Alvin's ice blue eyes, falling on the shimmering lake surface not far away, unknowingly thinking about something. Captain, where are we going next? If it's Berlin. Pulling Alvin's heart or mind back. God, Alvin stood up unnaturally. A suspicious blush rose on his or her cheeks. Was just about to speak, but the smart brain suddenly popped up with an unfamiliar Tiangzun message. He was very familiar with this number. Alvin angrily hung up Joseph's Tiangzun call. Block and delete. A one-stop service. Captain, did you two have a fight? Alvin doesn't have many friends. Joseph barely counts as one. Did you accidentally delete the wrong one? That was one of Prince Joseph's subordinates, lacking perceptiveness, continued to dance in the minefield. Shut up. If you mention that name again, I'll kill you. Alvin glanced at him coldly. Right now, he simply hates Joseph to the bone. If it weren't for Joseph, would he have taken such a beating last night? Sanchong, following behind Alvin, whispered among themselves. For a moment, they were all somewhat baffled. Did the captain eat gunpowder today? This is called displaced anger, understand? How many times has Prince Joseph confessed? The captain never paid him any attention, simply didn't take him seriously at all. This matter definitely has something to do with that Zili Shangzi. As he spoke, he rubbed his face. His voice lowered a few more degrees. Since ancient times, heroic females find it hard to pass the handsome male barrier. What do you think? Is it possible? The captain is addicted to the spiritual comfort provided by that male. What do you mean by this? His 2 companions looked confused. It means our captain is just like other female insects. His love-struck brain is acting up. He's turned into a brainless, foolish female insect. Why are you all looking at me like that? Why are you pulling me? Ivan shook off Berlin's hand. Suddenly, he felt a chill from behind, rising straight from his feet to the crown of his head. He stiffly turned his head and saw Alvin cracking his knuckles, making a creaking sound. Captain, I was wrong. Ouch, Captain. I really know I was wrong. The captain is absolutely brilliant. That useless male insect isn't worthy of you at all. Ouch, was that wrong too? Sherry glanced at the light screen. The little red dot is slowly moving towards this derivative village. Just now, he asked Jeffrey to use the aircraft to bring him here. He knew Alwyn must have come to look for that thing. In the original work, before the age of 4, Alwyn lived in this derived village with his kind father. Alwyn's kind father was a Junsi. He had always wanted a child of his own. But Junsi are strictly forbidden to give birth privately. His kind father used all his savings to secretly exchange for male insect sperm. Then, hiding it from everyone, he became pregnant and gave birth to Alwyn. They hid in this derived village, living a peaceful life. Later, Alwyn was still discovered by some malicious insects. He was first captured and sold to the slave market. After much wandering, he was rescued and taken away by the military and Alwyn's kind father. After that incident, his whereabouts became unknown. Alwyn searched for many years but found no trace. I'm afraid it's very difficult to find him again. Zi Li stopped in front of a certain metasequoia tree, bent over and reached into the soft, wet soil, digging a few times. A rust-covered necklace appeared before his eyes. The pendant was inlaid with a pigeon egg-sized blood-red amber. Inside the amber was sealed a small, magnificent, shimmering blue wing, the remnant wing of Alwyn's kind father. Also, the most precious gift his kind father gave to Alwyn. Zi Li carefully placed the necklace into his pocket. This was his farewell gift to Alwyn. Since he decided to let him go, he would let him go gracefully. Captain, we should hurry and leave. The engineering vehicles will soon push through to this area. Ivan stopped digging, looked at Alwyn. Alwyn's expression changed slightly. He could only reluctantly order a retreat. Back when he was captured, he secretly buried the gift under a certain metasequoia tree. He had searched for a long time before. Most of the metasequoia trees had been marked and ruled out. Only this area remained unsearched. But now, the forest area was going to be cut down. The soil would be turned over again to plant new saplings. He could destroy these engineering vehicles now, but the consequence would be attracting even greater trouble. Watching large stretches of metasequoia trees fall, the muddy ground pressed with crisscrossing wheel marks. All traces have been cleared. He clenched his fists. The corners of his eyes turned red. Let's come back and search after it gets dark. Ivan noticed Alvin's unusual behavior. They were aware. Alvin had been searching all along for that necklace his kind father gave him back then. But Alvin just said lightly, no need. Relying on the vague memories of being only 3 or 4 years old at the time, he knew he could never find that necklace again. His tone was flat, but his ice blue eyes grew increasingly pale, clearly suppressing strong emotional fluctuations. Suddenly, steady footsteps approached from behind. The trio turned their heads warily. Seeing the approaching bear, they quickly shielded Alvin behind them. Hi, Ivan. Long time no see. Jeffrey signaled to Ivan with a look. Let's go over there and catch up. Who are you, Jeffrey? Are we that close? Ivan curled his lip in disdain. Being pulled away by Jeffrey, he said irritably. Don't be so handsy. Jeffrey held back a laugh. We'll get close after spending time together. So many female insects wish I'd be handsy with them. But I'm not willing. Adolf saw Ivan being taken away by Jeffrey and the bear. He looked back at Alvin, quickly reached a definite conclusion. Alvin can easily handle Shirley. The bear pulled Belling, wanting to go rescue. But Ivan found he couldn't pull her. Berlin stared in surprise at the sleeve gripped tightly by Alvin. Feigning reluctance while actually welcoming, he said, Captain, I'll stay and be the third wheel. Isn't that bad? Adolf knows that Sherry Shangzi has come looking for him. Their presence here is unnecessary. He gave Alvin an encouraging look and dragged Berlin towards Ivan. Amid the ruins covering Baishan Qingdao, the space for two people felt unusually cramped. Alvin struggled to move his body. He wanted to turn and run away the moment Sherry approached, yet he failed again. Sherry took Alvin's hand, pulling Alvin towards himself. Holding Alvin's hand, he tucked it into his own coat pocket. He asked, "Were you looking for me?"